everyone, just me, Jeff Donnelly, JP Donnelly 8, jpdonnelly8.com, JP Donnelly Instagram, JP Donnelly 8 at a lot of places, right? Okay, if you like this, like, share, comment, whatever, you know? Okay, well, let's get down to the, nuts and bolts of this shit. So, let's talk about the FBI a little bit. Federal Bureau Investigation, not, like any of the other bullshit FBI terms. So, just recently, the FBI has raided former President Donald Trump's home, Mar-a-Lago, in Florida, right? This is a strange thing. The Attorney General, the AG, that actually signed off on this, it's the same person who refused to sign off on, I think it's the AG at least, but it's the exact same person who refused to sign off on a search warrant, requesting a search warrant at the time for the Unabomber's cabin back in the day. Remember the Unabomber, the guy that was blowing up everything because his political views and shit, and basically the very, very, very smart, very crazy Ted Kaczynski, I believe. Yeah. Okay, so this is the same guy that refused to ask for a warrant to search the Unabomber's cabin. Yet they search the former president's home. They also take passports and everything else. His passport, even though they only had a warrant to search and collect classified documents. Last I knew, someone's passport's not a classified document. But hell, this is the FBI we're talking about. So, a little bit of history on the FBI. We actually look at the FBI, us normal people, as, so we look at the FBI as a law enforcement organization that's there to protect American citizens. But is that really the truth? When the FBI was overseen by Director, Hoover, look what Hoover did. Hoover collected dirt on a bunch of politicians and a bunch of American citizens. He had dirt on JFK, he had, John F. Kennedy, the president who lost his head in Dallas. I can say that because I'm an Irish Catholic myself. And if you understand, he was the first and only Irish Catholic elected the presidency. He had documents on Robert Kennedy. He had documents on Martin Luther King Jr., MLK. The FBI has been collecting documents and everything else, and dirt on politicians and important, well-known people in America for as long as the FBI has been around. The FBI is also a political organization. Are they supposed to be? No, they're not, but they are a political organization, plain and simple. And here's a little bit else about them too. Remember something in the 1980s called Ruby Ridge with the Weaver family? Well, yes. They were involved in that situation, which cost the lives of American citizens. They were sued for that. Well, the government was sued for that, and the government lost. They unlawfully killed several members of the Weaver family. And why is that? Because Randy Weaver did not want to help them go after right-wing, neo-Nazis. So he refused to help them, so they went after him and killed members of his family. Go up several years, maybe a decade or so, what do we have? We have Waco, Texas. And the whole Waco, Texas situation with the Branch Davidians, that cost many, a couple hundred lives, men, women, and children. Come on, look at Waco. They drove a tank into the building and started pumping in tear gas, knowing that the tear gas was flammable, and were surprised when the place burnt down and cooked a bunch of American citizens. But hey, it's the FBI. Yet, I still had belief in the FBI myself. Because see, I've got a little bit of history with the FBI too. My history with the FBI is when I attempted to run for Congress against Richie Neal, and if anyone knows about how Congress operates or knows anything about Richie Neal, knows this. Richie Neal is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the most powerful committee in Congress. It's in charge of money. Who benefits from money? Well, the FBI does. That's one organization that benefits by having a strong supporter on the House Ways and Means Committee, especially the chairman. Because that's where they get their funds from, their money, their budget. House Ways and Means Committee has a lot of power over that. So when you look at it, Richie Neal is the chairman of that committee. I tried running against Richie Neal. Other people who have tried running against Richie Neal have also suffered greatly as a result of trying to poke the tiger or upseat Richie Neal. What's a good example? Well, before they gerrymandered and Massachusetts lost the congressional seat, Richie Neal was the congressional member representing the 2nd Congressional, Massachusetts, and this guy John Over was the first. What happened? Massachusetts lost the seat. John Over retired, and Richie Neal's district became, well, Over's, became basically Richie Neal's. And what did they do for Richie Neal? Well, 2 Republicans had tried running against Richie Neal, just that time before. One was from Ware, the other one was from Northampton. Well, Ware and Northampton were both removed from the 1st Congressional District, the new one, so Richie Neal didn't have to worry about those 2 people trying to run against him again. Me, on the other hand, I live in Springfield, just like Richie Neal, so... and plus, I was willing to run out of district anyways if it came down to it. So yeah, Richie Neal wasn't happy with that. But remember something else about Richie Neal. He's also the one that rubber stamped the, committee paperwork asking and demanding that Donald Trump give up his tax paperwork, his tax documents. Something that, legally speaking, Richie Neal had no authority to do, and Trump had no requirements to turn over. But let's get back to my situation with the FBI, though. What did I do? How am I involved with the FBI? Well, when all this corruption was going on, where I was facing the Richie Neal machine. Oh yeah, one last thing about Richie Neal and people who've run against him. The first openly homosexual, youngest mayor in Holyoke history, this guy Alex Moore, he tried running against Richie Neal. He went from being loved in the Democrat Party to being no longer able to win re-election to be mayor of Holyoke. So what happened? Well, he kept quiet about Richie Neal, wasn't complaining about the machine, wasn't blaming Neal for all of the slander that was coming out right at the last moment before the election. And he was rewarded with a nice cushy job as a town administrator up in Provincetown on the Cape in Massachusetts. So let's see, his political career is so damaged that he can no longer win re-election to be mayor of Holyoke. Yet, he gets a cushy job as a town administrator where he doesn't have to run for re-election in Provincetown, P-Town, go figure. Okay, so with me, right? I went to the FBI and made a complaint many years ago. After the original corruption I faced, right, I wrote my book about Emotion and Political Repression, the journal, detailing the illegal actions that were perpetrated against me after I did take out papers to run for Congress. So what happens, though, is right after I write the book and file the lawsuits showing corruption, Richie Neal's political machine really ramped up everything majorly. And yeah, I went to the FBI with a couple hundred pages of documents and evidence. Because remember something, you're not talking to someone, you're not listening to someone who just like is sitting there grabbing shit out of the air, blowing smoke up here. You're looking at it, you're listening to a guy who went to school for criminal justice, who worked in a law enforcement organization, who was in youth corrections. I have worked in the field. I do have the degrees in the field, in the criminal justice field. I have written criminal complaints against people and issued criminal complaints. I have been parties of arresting people and everything else. So you're not just listening to someone who's just like some kind of conspiracy nut. You're looking at someone who knows how to investigate a crime or a situation. And that's why, honestly, I wasn't found, that's why they had to drop the charges that they filed in Munson against me. And Palmer, the courthouse one, because I knew where to look for the information I needed. And I came up with information that they tried to hide. I investigated the situations. If you listen to the motion to dismiss that I filed in both cases, you'll see exactly what the hell went down and how it all was corrupt in those two cases. Those aren't the only two cases that I've had to deal with over the last 13, 14 years. There's been a lot of other situations that I've had to investigate my way out of because of the corruption. But anyways, getting back to the FBI, I contacted the FBI about this because remember something, I was a candidate for the United States Congress. I was running for the United States Congress, and these state agencies were participating in extreme political corruption. A lot of people laughed at me and said, no, yeah, right. But now look at Trump. Look at what we're seeing them do to him. The only reason why it's so out in the open is because Trump is pushing it. The FBI never planned on the public knowing about them serving search warrants on Trump. And why? Because they expected Trump to keep quiet about it and not mention anything of it. And if you look at it, right, classified documents. We all know Trump declassified all that stuff when he left the White House. And that's, he's the only one that had to declassify this information because he was the president. He was the head of the United States. He could have declassified anything he wanted to. And on top of it, if you look at this, these boxes that were removed from the White House, right, by Trump. We all know that Trump's not the one that removed the boxes. People working for the Trump administration are the ones that actually got together and actually removed the documents. And the Trump administration was working with the archives, for the to give them back whatever they were supposed to get back. And now back to my situation. I know I'm going off track and everything else. I'm just driving and talking to you guys. So with me, I end up going to the FBI, delivering them all that paperwork, hundreds of documents, proving corruption, proving a chain, proving a conspiracy. A lot of it's in the book I wrote. Well, the first part of it is in the book I wrote. Emotion and Political Repression. So, what did the FBI do? Absolutely nothing. About a year later, I went to the FBI again with more documents, more information, showing how everything had been getting worse, how more corruption was going on, including being arrested for posting on Facebook what happened in court. Yeah. Not only was I arrested for posting on Facebook what happened in court. But when they arrested me, they handcuffed me and put guns right to my head. Yep. I had a couple guns pointing at my head, and I felt like my head was about to become a fucking watermelon with Gallagher hitting it with a fucking sledgehammer. Yeah. I really thought that my fucking head was going to explode into a bunch of little pieces, because their fingers were on those triggers and they were pointing those guns at my head. Why? Because I posted on Facebook what happened in court. I was showing corruption. What's the FBI about that even, And the FBI took a complaint, signed a complaint saying, oh, we're going to investigate this, we'll get back to you, blah, blah, blah. Never heard from them. That was several years ago. Called up, asked about it a couple of years back, and they said, we do not contact on investigations. It's like, okay, so I'm like, so are you investigating this? Like, well, we can't tell you that. Well, let's see, it's been like 13 years, so if they're investigating it, I don't know who's investigating it. Maybe Mr. Magoo? Yeah, they don't fucking care about us. They only care about the political elite. And the January 6th, that shows a lot, January 6th, people just entering, people being led into the Capitol building by Capitol Police. Well, they were arrested, charged, thrown in jail, and some are still behind bars waiting trial. Why? Because they're Republicans. Because when you had a bunch of Antifa and Democrats burning down the guard station at the White House and trying to enter the White House, and I do believe that they did enter Congress and protested inside Congress when they were led by AOC. But, those individuals were not locked up and charged by the FBI. You gotta wonder why. Right now, we're living in a very scary, very bad time. We're living in a time where, depending on your political affiliation, you can either be allowed to do whatever you want, commit any crime you want, or on the flip side, because of your political affiliation, you could jaywalk and be thrown in jail. Hell, if I spit on the sidewalk, they'd probably throw me in jail, right now, I've got an appeal going on in court because I had once again, we get back to Richie Neal. I had a judge who is Richie Neal's former congressional attorney make custom jury instructions that went against the law in order to find me guilty of, I have no idea. Honestly. Under the Massachusetts general law, if I had a firearm license in Massachusetts, when the Springfield Police Department contacted me and ordered that I turn it in, I would have had to turn in the valid license. But the situation with that right there is my firearm license had expired about a couple weeks beforehand. So I didn't have a Massachusetts gun license to actually turn into the Springfield Police Department. So I couldn't have been found guilty of that. And then turning in my firearms to Springfield Police Department, well, I didn't have any firearms in Massachusetts, as the Springfield Police Department were notified of a couple weeks prior that the firearms had been removed from the state into a state that I was still legally allowed to own it. So, if I had firearms in Massachusetts, I would have had to turn those into the Springfield Police Department. Okay, but my firearms were in Vermont, and the Springfield PD was notified of that. So in order to be found guilty, the Springfield Police Department had to prove that I had an active firearm license I refused to turn into them, which I didn't. And they had to prove that I had firearms located in Massachusetts when they contacted me, which they didn't. They couldn't prove. Yet, by the custom jury instructions, you can listen to that video, I was found guilty because there was no way not to be found guilty, because the custom jury instructions went against what the Massachusetts general law actually stated had to happen. Okay, well, anyways, like, back to the FBI. If the FBI ever comes to you and asks you any questions or says that they want to talk to you, that they need your help or whatever, just say no. Just tell them you want an attorney. Do not ever talk to the FBI. Do not ever make statements to the FBI. And when it comes to law enforcement in general, just keep your wits about you, and if you cannot talk to them and answer their questions, don't. Me, I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I will talk to the police. I will talk to the FBI. I will make statements. But then again, when I do, like, they know they can't fucking pitch me on anything, so do you know what they do? They delete it. Yeah. As you saw with the Palmer case, the Palmer case, and as you saw with the Munson case, law enforcement in those cases deleted video and audio recordings. Why? Because that's how they operate. They don't give a shit. They will do whatever they can do to find you guilty, whether they have to make it up or not. And anything that they have that will help you, they will bury. And get back to Trump. They returned his passports, right? Why'd they take him in the first place? That warrant was only for top secret, classified information. But no, they took everything that they could take. They broke into his safe. That was empty. They searched his wife's dressers, closets. This shows why we cannot trust our government. When you're in a position of authority, you need to be held accountable for your actions. The FBI should be held accountable for their actions. They should be held accountable for stealing former President Trump's paperwork, his passports, going through his wife's clothing. Come on. Fucking bunch of pedophiles, a bunch of perverts. Okay, well, donations, whatever, can be, PayPal to jpdonnelly8@aol.com. Questions, comments can be sent to jpdonnelly8@aol.com. If you want to help out, you can buy some artwork or buy the book that I wrote, Emotion and Political Repression. Just reach out to me and I'll sell you a copy. Okay? Have a good day. Bye.